I think we're live. All right, so the way this works. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Carrier, and I am here today in Toni Saunders' office. This is Toni Saunders. Hey. And Toni is a special education guru here in the United States, and she is going to be talking about special education and how you advocate for children with special needs. So we're going to wait a few minutes. Let's see, do we have any viewers yet? So Toni, this is how it works. I actually have to look at my phone sometimes because there's kind of a delay. So please, if you're here, write in the comments who you are, where you're from. Hello, Hamad. Hello, Mara. Aw, you're a lovely lady too, Mara. Thank you. So we are going to be talking about something that's really, really important, and that is how are we supporting students who have special learning needs? How are we supporting them in schools? How are we supporting them in life? So I'm glad that we have several of you here already. And I want to know, hello, Kashish, how are you? I want to know from you all. Oh, Hamad says, nice to meet you, Toni. I want to know from you all what you know about special education. Do you even know what that means? Maybe you have a term that's different in your country. I know in Pakistan, people with physical disabilities are referred to as special persons. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And Toni really truly is a guru. So I'm going to be asking her a lot of questions and having her talk to you about all of her years of expertise. She's been doing this for how many years?
35.
35 years. Mm-hmm. And what got her started is a really beautiful story that I'm excited for you guys to hear also. And some of you might already know what that story is.
Well, I'll begin by telling you I have a daughter who has cerebral palsy, and that is a disorder that affects your neurology, your brain, and your brain rules your body. So if you've got, it's sort of like brain damage, but not quite. But if you have issues at all in your brain physically, then it's going to affect you physically. Okay? So what her issues are is that her hands don't work as well as ours do, and her legs don't work as well as ours do. But cognitively, she functions very well. And she's actually got superior intelligence. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, what you have to look at should I say, the differences between people. You don't actually look at the disability itself. You have to look at the person and how they present. Some people with cerebral palsy actually have issues with cognitive skills as well as physical skills. And some can talk, some can't. Cassandra, my daughter, can talk, and she is a technology genius. So so some people can do certain things and some people can't, and that's just the way of the world. So what else would you like me to express to them?
Well, I want to know more about your journey, what brought you here today. But can you tell us what happened 35 years ago?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so picture this. I was in the hospital and they didn't want her to come right away, so they gave me medications to keep her from coming.
This is her first baby.
Yes, my first child. And they basically didn't want me to have the baby yet. She was going to be a bit premature. And the hospital that I was in said, this, we're going to send you to another hospital in Boston. And I was in a place called Stoughton, which was about an hour away. When we were driving, I was in the ambulance and my husband was behind me. Um, they got lost. The ambulance got lost. And so I ended up they ended up not knowing where they were. So I had to sit up and look around and told them that I could get them to a certain street.
While you're in labor.
While I was in labor.
The ambulance directions.
Yes.
To the hospital.
Yes. This is before GPSs, by the way. And so I lifted up my body and, told them how to get there or to a street that they knew so that they could get to the hospital. I had never been to the hospital before. And so when I got there, they put me on the emergency ward because my water had already broken and they didn't want me to get an infection or the baby to get an infection. So I'm there on the emergency ward and my husband was with me, but they told him it's probably going to be days or whatever before I actually have the baby. Why doesn't he go home? And he did. So when he went home, fast forward to 4 o'clock that day, I started going into labor again. So they ignored me. They told me that, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just having some cramps and that kind of thing. And I said, no, this baby is coming. So I called my husband and I told him to come back, which was an hour away. He started coming back, and when he got back to the hospital, they actually told him he couldn't come in to see me. And I started, yelling at them. My husband's going to come in. I'm going to have this baby. Don't tell me I'm not, yada, yada. And he came in. They said he could stay for 10 minutes and then he had to leave. And I said to him, you're not going anywhere because I'm having this baby. I can feel it. So I was right. When the doctor came in and examined me, I was dilated and it was time for me to start, doing the having a baby
Having
thing.
the baby.
And it took 17 and a half hours. They gave me morphine, which I can't imagine why they did that, but they gave me morphine to stop the contractions, and the contractions never stopped, and she kept coming, but it took 17 and a half hours. During my pregnancy, during my, my labor, I told my husband that our next child was going to be a Vietnamese child because I was not having another baby again.
You were going to adopt another child?
Yes. And, so I ended up having her. But what happened was, because there were so many children, premature children born on that day in that hospital, they let me keep her for an hour, and then they took her and brought her to a different hospital that did not have a maternity ward. So I couldn't go there and stay with her. So the next morning...
And that's very unusual.
It's very unusual.
That a mother and baby are in separate hospitals.
Right, exactly. So the next morning, when my doctor came in, I said, let me go. I'm going because my daughter isn't here. I have no reason to be here. And he said, I can't let you go. You just had a baby a few hours ago and you have to stay here and rest and get care. And I said, no, absolutely not. I am going today. If I have to sign myself out, I will. You give me the paperwork, I'm gone because I'm not staying here. And they ended up giving me the paperwork. And because I'm, you know, most people listen to me when I speak. Yeah, anyway.
So you had just given birth.
Yep.
You sign yourself out of the hospital
Yep.
because your baby is in another hospital.
Right.
You have no idea why or what's going on.
Right.
I can't even imagine. If any of you watching have had children, I'm sure you can feel how hard that must be. Oh my gosh.
What I realized then was that I'm going to be fighting for her life and my connection to her because they didn't want me to go, etc. I went to the other hospital and I stayed there with her all day long. And the next day I was home and I get a call that she had had a brain bleed. And I was like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
And they said, we don't know what happened. We did a spinal tap. There was no blood in her spine. But, you know, she did have a brain bleed. And I said, okay. And I immediately, you know, got dressed and went back there. I went there every day. But why she was in the hospital is the issue. She was in the hospital because someone who transported her from one hospital to the next had hepatitis B. Somehow had either contracted it somewhere and passed it on to my daughter. They actually tested me for it and I didn't have it. So it wasn't for me. And because of the hepatitis B, she ended up having to stay in the hospital for 2.5 weeks getting antibiotics. And they had the lead in her brain.
So the antibiotics were in.
Yeah, were going into her brain. Yes. Yeah.
Is that even normal?
I have no idea.
I've never heard of that.
I was going to sue them, but I had no documentation of what had actually happened. All I know is that she contracted a disease from somebody who handled her, and she had to suffer for it. And while she was suffering, she had the brain bleed. Now, the thing that got me was the brain is where they had the lead to go with the antibiotics. Mm-hmm. So, and it was on the right side that they had it. Her cerebral palsy was on the left side, which means the right side was damaged. And again, I couldn't prove it. I did get her records, but you couldn't read them. And so that was her plight in life.
So you went through the excitement of I'm going to have a child, my first baby, the chaos of getting to the hospital, having your baby, going through 17 and a half hours of labor, and then the unknown, where's my baby? What's going on? And you just keep getting bad news after bad news after bad news.
That's what happened.
That must have been horrifying.
It was. It was.
And you had nobody
to
advocate for you?
No, nobody advocated for me. I had to do everything myself.
And this is actually why Toni does what she does. Mm-hmm. She advocates for people with physical learning disabilities, whatever they have, to make sure that they get what they are legally entitled to.
Right.
Their rights are upheld under the law. This is what she's done for 35 years. Her first client was her daughter. Mm-hmm. And many of you actually know Cassandra Saunders. Cassandra, are you watching? I haven't seen you pop up yet.
She's eating.
Oh, she's eating? Okay. Mm-hmm. So, okay, you went through this hell
Yes.
with your own child.
Yes.
And I know you and I have talked, and you said that her entire life, you never let anybody keep her from doing anything that she
Right.
wanted to do or she was entitled to do. That includes going to college.
Yes.
People told you she would never go to college.
People told me she wouldn't graduate high school.
So you made it happen.
I did. I did. Because what I didn't do was put her in these small classes. Like here, they're called substantially separate programs. And they're for kids who can't learn like a mainstream typical child. And even though my daughter couldn't learn quite like them because she couldn't use her hands the way we can, so she couldn't write, she had to have an aide with her to write for her. She would tell them what to write, though. And as time went on, when she was in the 8th grade, they decided that she had to go to a place with people of her own kind to get educated. They said, our high school will not be able to educate her the way she needs to be educated. She needs to go to a different high school where everybody is in wheelchairs. And I said, absolutely not. And I said to them, if I'm a Black woman living in Sandwich, which is where I live in Cape Cod, and
it's a very white,
community. Yeah, community. Should I have gone to the town over that has, like Native Americans and Cape Verdeans and all that stuff? Should I have moved there to be with people of my own kind? And they said, oh, no, Toni, that's not what we mean. I said, it's the same thing. You can't live in a world with just wheelchairs. You can't grow up with just wheelchairs. You have to be a part of an entire community. And I said, and you will educate my daughter because I'm going to make sure of it. So everything I asked for, they gave me. They gave her a tray to put a laptop on so that she could do her own, typing.
Mm-hmm.
They gave her voice to text software so that she could speak into a microphone and speak what she wanted to write. They gave her a person to come to my house and do her homework with her because I said, you want her to do homework? Find somebody and pay someone to come and do it with her because I'm not doing it anymore.
And in this country, in the United States, the law actually says that schools have to provide these services for children.
Yes. Yes.
And even though the law says so, it doesn't mean that it happens. And a lot of times it's because there's not someone who knows the law,
right?
Knows what the rights are.
Right. If the parents don't know, the school doesn't tell them. And if the school doesn't tell them and the parents don't know, the child doesn't get an appropriate education. So what I do is I go through the records of each individual child that I work with, and I find out exactly what it is they need. And it's very simple. The problem is because it costs money to do, let's say, to buy a laptop for a kid, because it costs money, they do everything in their power not to let you know that your child actually needs something for output, like a computer or a keyboard of some kind. A
communication tool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so what happens is that they're trying to do like a one size fits all, classroom. All the kids here have autism. All the kids here have developmental delay. All the kids here have a reading disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the way it's supposed to be. They're supposed to be included. And it's very difficult to include someone that you don't know how they learn. And so the problem is that everyone in the team meeting, which is what you have to do, have to go to in order to have a document that's a signed contract, what the school is going to do to educate your child. Now, what happens is they don't tell the parent everything, so they leave a lot out of that document. And what I do is I go into all the paperwork. I compare documents from years of special education, and then I let them know. I let the parents know exactly what it is that their child needs.
Can you hit that show button?
This one?
Yep. You don't have touch screen, do you?
No, I don't.
Here, yeah. So I'm putting up on screen this one comment, Toni, because this is actually from my virtual assistant.
Okay.
She says, "This is what my mother did for my brother as well. He studied in a normal school, even with Down syndrome."
Yes.
And that's in Pakistan. That's wonderful. And I actually had the fortune to talk with someone about this, to hear about everything that her mother did before her brother unfortunately passed away. But if a child does not have a parent who has the knowledge, the time, the resources, the just commitment to do that, children end up getting lost.
Yes.
And part of the reason
they don't graduate from high school,
right.
which is huge, because
right.
think about it. If you can't get past that first glass ceiling,
right.
you have no future.
Yeah, you have to have your high school diploma.
Right.
You have to.
Right.
So you can actually hit hide, wherever hide is.
Let me see.
There it is. That one. Yep. Oh, with the mouse.
Oh.
I have a touchscreen computer, and I'm like,
all right. So I click here.
Does it say hide? Yes.
It says hide current comment.
Okay. Thank you, Saman, for saying that. So, there's so much that I want to talk about, but we only have 1 hour broadcast for this.
Okay.
And I want you all to know, first of all, that Toni actually does her own live broadcast every night.
Monday through Friday around 9-10 o'clock at my time, which is Eastern Standard Time.
It's New York time. So 9 p.m. New York
9
time.
or 10, depending upon what I did prior to in the daytime.
Okay.
How much time I have.
So that's really good. For those of you in Asia, it's, morning, late morning. For those of you in Pakistan, India, it's earlier morning, but you still have the opportunity. And part of the reason, there's several reasons that I wanted to have this conversation today. Number one is we don't even talk about it enough here in the United States, that kids need advocates. Everybody needs an advocate, even a normal, healthy, able-bodied, does well on exams. All children need advocates. This is what my life has been committed to. This is what Toni's life has been committed to, which is why we've become such good friends.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the work we're doing, and we know how important it is.
Yes.
To stand up for people who
can't stand up for themselves.
Yeah. So, Toni and I could just broadcast to an American audience for years, and there would still be so much work to do. But what was important to me, because my audience is so global, right now, Toni, my classroom is reaching 104 countries.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that is amazing.
I wanted to have Toni talk about what it is that she does and help anyone, anywhere in the world, to answer the questions you have, because she has been through everything. And she does have a degree. You have a
master's degree in psychology of applied behavioral analysis, which means I can analyze pretty much anything, behavior, what is causing something to happen. I analyze it. And that's what I do for all of my parents, is analyze what their child needs based on behavior, based on scores in evaluations, whatever it is that I get for paperwork from each parent is what I go through and come up with what the child needs.
Yeah. And, you know, not only did she get this, she has this degree, but she didn't get this before she had her child.
No.
Her child put her on her path. And you got your master's degree within the last 10 years or so?
2012.
Oh, it's only 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's another example. She was an adult. She just figured out, here's where I'm going. This is what I care about. And she went and got the degree that she needed. And in Toni's case, she had to, because she was doing all of this legal work.
Right.
You had to have that master's degree to prove that you knew, not just that you cared about what you were doing, but that you knew all of the pieces that you had to do.
Right.
And I can attest to it. I'm in her office. Her office is filled, stacks of folders like this that are full of papers, and they are all one child. One child has all this documentation of all of the struggles that they have had in school. And I did see a comment here from Takwa. She says she's going to, Julia says, I love that you're a parent advocate. I started my career as a teacher in special education, and we didn't have parent advocates then.
Oh.
Some of us teachers tried to advocate for them, but the school told us it wasn't our job.
Right. Exactly.
And she's a social worker.
And where is she from?
She's in LA. She's one of the mentor teachers in my classroom.
Oh, okay.
Yep. She's in LA.
Right. Well, that's because they don't want you to know. They don't want parents to know. If they don't tell you, you don't ask for, and you don't get. That's just it.
So Takwa, hi Takwa, I'm glad you're here. Takwa Ahmed is in Pakistan. She's a very impressive and wonderful young girl. She's 11 years old, and she has spina bifida. I think a lot of people know who Takwa Ahmed is. And she has an amazing advocate in her father.
Ah.
Yes. Her father just does whatever he can. But even when you have that parent who can advocate for you, they don't necessarily know the laws, the rights.
Yeah, the rights. And beyond that, it's that they may not know everything. Mm-hmm. So what I do is tell them everything. Even if I'm telling them for the first time, they're hearing it from me that your child's autistic, you need to go to XYZ doctor and find out if I'm right. And I'm always right, because I know the presentations of an autistic child. And I know that when the school just continuously suspends the child or says, you know, you have to go to a different placement or whatever, it's usually because the child, their diagnosis is not real. The schools try to diagnose kids, but they can't. The only way that you can truly know what a child's needs are based on their disability is when a doctor says, this is what it is.
Doctors diagnose.
Yes, doctors diagnose. The problem with that, however, is some doctors err on the side of caution when it comes to autism. And what they do is they don't tell you that your child is autistic. They just say they have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And that is what goes on that contract that you have between the school. But if they're just giving you services for a child with ADHD, all of the autistic pieces don't get work done.
So I know here in this country, we just hit a milestone. 10% of American children are medicated for ADD, ADHD, some sort of behavioral issue, which is horrifying, horrifying. Our children are being medicated because they learn differently and schools don't know how to respond. And let me just say, let me just kind of put a disclaimer on this. I'm not putting, I have to make sure I'm in the camera here. I'm not putting blame on the schools. I was a high school teacher, a public school teacher. Schools are maxed out beyond anything that you can imagine. Teachers are completely under-resourced. They have so many students, they have so many mandates, so many things that they have to report on. They have to teach, they have to grade, they have to follow a standard curriculum. And that's a very, very hard job. It's a very hard job.
Mm-hmm.
Budgets for schools are constantly cut. I remember the 6 years that I was a teacher, every single year. And then it got to the point where some of my colleagues were getting laid off because their positions were cut because there wasn't enough funding. Then we didn't have the assistant in the library, just all the things that we didn't have, the resources for kids. And it's getting even worse now.
Yeah.
Because the curriculum is so challenging and there are so many children who need the individual attention that we have to figure out, how do we personalize education? And so there's the big problem, right? There's the macro, which is how do we fix this for all children? How do we fix education for all children? And then there's the micro problem, which is your child is living an entire lifetime with their challenge and what is being done to help meet their needs. And if your child doesn't have you as an advocate, and it's entirely possible. I mean, you probably have a full-time job. You might have other children. You might have so many responsibilities that you just do what you can, but it's still not enough.
Right.
And I'm sure you also don't have the expertise and the training that Toni has. So one of the things that I really wanted to give anyone viewing the opportunity to do, Toni and I are going to keep talking, but I wanted to give you all the opportunity to ask questions. So this is literally the person who gets contacted when people have questions, when they say, there's, my kid is just, he keeps getting expelled from school, or he keeps getting in trouble, or he got in trouble for yelling out in the middle of class, but I think the punishment was unfair. Those types of things happen all the time. And parents end up coming to Toni if they're fortunate enough to find her and be able to get some of her time. So we want to know, what questions do you have about situations that you are experiencing or And the thing is, I'm sure you have, even if you don't have kids, you have friends who have kids and you hear stories about those challenges. Sometimes the challenge is just the curriculum. Your child just cannot get the math curriculum. So what does that mean? Your child fails math class and then has to repeat math class, and then that child gets so frustrated that they start acting out. This is how it happens. So I want you to be able to ask Toni whatever questions you have. So, and thank you to Layla and, Larry, Lortis, how are you? And Takwa and Julia and everybody else who's here with us right now. If you haven't already, I would like you all to share this video. This is something that's going to be very valuable in rebroadcast, because I promise you, if you are watching this later, or if you've even been listening, there were a lot of comments in the beginning while you were talking. Oh. People were sad. They're really sad. You went through a lot.
I did. But you know something? I got her in school at 8 months old.
What? What
is that? Old.
What does that even mean?
There's this thing called early intervention, and it was a full day school. She went every morning at 8 and got back at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh my gosh.
The first week she cried the entire time she was there.
Oh.
And they kept trying to get me to bring her home, and maybe she's not ready. And I said, nope, you keep her there. She's 8 months old. She'll get it. And she did. She did. 1 week it took, but if you stay on the course,
Mm-hmm.
it'll work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so had been in school since 8 months old and graduated when she was 18. So she was.
Let's click that one.
Okay, this one right here.
Yep. Finish telling your story, and then I'll have you answer that.
Yeah. So, and I had to fight for her to be in early intervention. I had to fight for her to be in inclusion kindergarten. I went to a kindergarten class, and they told me to look and see if it's something that I would let Cassandra go into. And I said, absolutely not. There was a young girl there who was one of my friend's daughters who had the same disability as my friend.
Mm.
And she couldn't walk, but she could combat crawl. And she had to combat crawl to go to each of the sections of kindergarten that, you know, the other kids could just get up and walk over to.
Oh my gosh.
And they didn't even wait for her. They started playing without her, etc. And I looked and I said, no.
That's not a good environment.
No. But the worst part about it was I went to observe them one specific day, and they were going to have their pictures taken. And so the kids with crutches and wheelchairs and whatever were in one room, and they left their crutches and things in that room, and they went into the room to get their picture taken. And other kids, typical kids from the same school, were standing in line. Able-bodied kids were standing in line waiting to go in. So they went into the same room where all the crutches and things were, and they started playing with them.
Because they're kids.
Because they're kids. And they were kindergarten.
Oh my gosh.
First grade kids.
Wow.
And what happened was the teacher of the classroom they wanted my daughter to go into came out and started screaming at these kids.
Like kindergartners.
Yes.
No.
Those aren't yours. Leave them alone. How dare you? You know, and all that. See, I'm the type of person, I used to go to my daughter's school and take her out of her wheelchair, hold her up and let her walk around, and let the kids play with her electric wheelchair, because why not?
That's how kids learn.
That's right.
They're curious. Why does that kid come in a chair?
Right.
Or with crutches?
Right.
So Julia has a question here. Let's see if you can answer that. She says, how do we help people stand up to doctors to get their kids off the drugs? Whoa. There's $1 million question.
You know, it's so simple to keep your child off of the medications that they want to put them on. All you have to do is say no and not give it to them. Period. My daughter has, except for when she had seizures, and that's another story, she has never been on medication except seizure medication. And the reason why she was on seizure medication is because after getting the hepatitis C shots in the I'm not in the hospital, when she was in middle school, she ended up having seizures from the shots.
Oh,
yes.
no.
So when they tell you that autism isn't caused by immunizations, I don't believe it. I will never believe that.
So, Layla, let's put this one up on screen. It has to do with the medication. And then I do want to answer Takwa's question next. But Layla says, what about drugs given to children that don't fit in school? Is it a problem in the US?
Of course. Drugs are a problem everywhere, and it's because the pharmaceutical companies are actually pushing drugs on children. Here in the United States, we actually had to create a law to stop the school districts from telling parents, if you don't put your child on drugs, I'm going to call the Department of Social Services, and your child is going to be taken away from you because we can't educate them the way they are right now.
Wow.
And we had to create a law to stop them from doing that. And do you know they still do it? They still do it, even though it's a law.
Even though it's against the law.
Yeah.
For an educator to say to a parent, you have to get your kids on drugs or we're not going to teach them.
That's right.
And in this country, it's the law. Every child is obligated by law to go to school until the age of 16, right?
Yes.
They can legally drop out. They're not done, but they can legally drop out of school once they get to 16.
Right. Right. But the parent has to be able to sign off on it now instead of just allowing the kid to
that I know
leave.
That changed, I think, during the time that I was teaching. Mm-hmm. So Takwa says, and I think it's down too far for us to put it up on screen, but Takwa says, what can we do to promote inclusive education? Let's take this comment off the screen.
Okay.
Hit the hide.
Okay, wait a minute. Did I answer the first question, which was about drugs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So repeat that
one. So
one.
Takwa's question, and Takwa is in Pakistan.
Okay.
She says, what can we do to promote inclusive education?
Oh, well, first of all, you have to learn about different types of disabilities. The school system in a lot of countries don't have to educate all children. So if you want inclusion, you have to, I don't know what your country would do, but you would have to legislate having, all children being able to participate in education.
So make a law. You have to talk to your lawmakers, your representatives, your ministers, your
everybody,
senators, whoever.
You have to bring people together with this common cause. Mm-hmm. And the common cause would be allowing children with disabilities to be inside of a classroom with kids that don't have disabilities. Because that's how they learn. That's life.
Right.
It's not like they're going to grow up and be in a place where all the people are the same. Mm-hmm. That's what I was talking about with my daughter in the wheelchair situation. Yeah.
Well, in this idea, we call it here inclusion, mm-hmm. where all children have the right to learn together. It used to be said that there was this term substantially separated. There were classrooms that were substantially separated.
They're still there.
Yeah. For kids with special needs, mm-hmm. but we're trying to knock down those barriers.
Yes.
And I think that Takwa, this is such an important question because I think part of it is talking about it. So, here I've been running my little volunteer classroom for the world to learn whatever, you want to learn, whatever I feel like we need to talk about. And I've been doing this for a year. And this is the first time that I've actually even brought up the special education piece. And it's not because I didn't want to. I've worked with special needs children and I physically have my own special needs. But it's because there's so many other things that seem to overwhelm the world and society right now. So many problems. But we all must remember that we have to take care of our children because the children become the leaders that will make the change in our societies.
And that's it.
So you have to. I did a very special live broadcast about 10 days ago where I was talking about the fact that we all have to do this. And we all have to remember that when Toni and I are old women, we will have to go to doctors or go to hospitals where the doctors and the nurses are much, much younger than us. They will have been the children today
that we are
advocating for. that Toni is advocating for to make sure that they have the opportunities that they deserve to have. And one of the things I am always saying to people is that you never know the brilliance that is locked inside the mind of a child.
That's right.
And when I talk about that, I talk about, the 14-year-old kid living in a tribe in sub-Saharan Africa that has, no resources, no communication with the outside world. But that child, there's actually an example of this. 14-year-old boy, I don't remember where in Africa he came from, but he came to MIT because he went through a dump and he used garbage to make a radio. Then he made a radio tower and he started a radio program, all out of garbage. And MIT brought him here to let him play in a lab. So you never know what's inside of a child.
That's right.
With special needs. Look, we all have special needs.
We all do.
We all learn differently. My whole life, I did not learn the way my school taught. That meant that my grades weren't fantastic and I felt isolated.
Yeah.
But somehow I made it through. So there are a couple more comments here. Layla says, but if you don't give the drugs to them and they'll still be in school and the school does not change, what happens to the kids?
And that's the dilemma. Because
Layla's in Brazil, by the way.
Okay. Giving a child, and I mean children, pharmaceutical medication alters their brain. They're growing. Their neurons are expanding and learning. And if you give them a drug, it stops parts of their brain from actually developing. As a matter of fact, I remember reading about Ritalin, and most countries use Ritalin. Now, Ritalin shrinks your brain. So imagine being a child with, say, ADHD, and they give them Ritalin, and that drug in itself, one of the side effects is to shrink your brain. So what happens to you in your future? What does that do to you when your brain is shrinking?
Right. The damage that it does.
It's brain damaging.
Layla says, and please, I'm not in favor of giving drugs to them. On the contrary, I just want to listen to your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine. My opinion is that unless it's life-threatening, whatever it is that they have is life-threatening without pharmaceuticals, then they should be on them.
Mm.
If they don't have a disease like cancer or HIV or whatever it is, if they don't have that and they don't need the drugs, then why put them on them?
Then it's just the adults have to learn how to teach, to deal with the cognitive behavioral.
That's it.
Yeah.
Adults go to school to do it.
Right. It's our job.
Yeah.
Right? Like if we just take school out of the equation, it's the job of adults to raise the children.
That's right.
To give the children what it is that they need to grow up happy and healthy and whole and balanced and excited about the future and having dreams.
Right.
So Toni, we've got just a little bit more time, and I've got a question here from Takwa. And anybody else, if you have any other questions, please put them here. And I'll ask Toni after the video's over, maybe not right away, but she'll go through and she'll respond to each of the comments. Mm-hmm. And you are welcome to connect with Toni as well. You can follow her on Facebook. She has a number of followers already, so you can watch her live broadcasts. Layla, one more comment from Layla in Brazil. She says, I know I read a lot about Ritalin also. I totally agree with you. But what happens in school after the parents say, I'm not going to give this to my kid? What's your experience? Okay. Can you give a quick answer to that?
Real quick answer. The child actually learns, gets out of school, goes to college, and has a happy life.
That's a happy life.
Because when you put a child, especially with ADHD, on the medications that are out there today, they rob your brain of your mind.
Mm.
Your ability to even process what it is that's going on and what you have to do and
to be present.
It just doesn't work.
Wow.
You know, and like I said, if you're taking a drug that changes your neurology, your brain is going to be different, and you may not be able to learn the same way you did before.
Right. Wow. It's such a huge topic. It's a very controversial topic.
It is
in the United States.
It is,
and there's so much to say about it. I do want to say Takwa is asking a question, and Takwa, I think I've told you a little bit about her, but she's actually an ambassador in Pakistan for people with disabilities, and she gets up on stage. She's been doing that since she was like 7. Speaking in English, and Urdu is her native language, speaking in English about advocating for the rights of special needs children. So she says, is there any option that we have to raise our voice to the UN for special needs and special ones?
There's always that option. All you need to do is do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. I mean, when all of the meetings and, you know, I meet with public officials and all of them, you have to advocate while you're talking.
Right.
What is it you want? Come together and figure it out. Yeah. Exactly what you want. You want inclusion? Tell them you want inclusion. Do some research and figure out how to make inclusion work. You know, some kids, you know, if they're like severely autistic or something like that, can't be included in everything, but they can be brought into, say, the science class to work on a project and things like that. It's just that society doesn't want that to happen. It's so much easier to take a classroom of typical kids and advance them so that they can graduate. But when you sprinkle in some children with different learning challenges, it becomes more difficult for the teacher. But then again, if they know what it is they're supposed to do, it's not that daunting. Yeah. So there are many facets to the problem. Yeah. Teachers need to be given more training and resources and time to deal with this. But that means schools need to be given more resources and time and training to support their teachers so that their teachers can support the students. That's it. It's the problems within the system. That's right. And right now we have problems in every system, everywhere in the world. It's all we see these days. And at this time, Toni's answer to you was, you have to just do it. And that's literally the answer to every problem that exists. Every question you're thinking, how do we fix this? Number one, do not give your power away. You have to say, if I care about this, I have to do something about it. Right. And Toni also said, number two. So number one, trying to get in the camera. Number one, you have to acknowledge the fact that you are being called to do this, to stand up for children. Number two, you have to create a community around your advocacy, your desire to make a change. Right. So that community of people, a community can be 2, it can be 10, it can be 100. Doesn't matter. Find the other people who care about this same issue. Bring them together. Come up with a simple plan for how you can meet the needs of these children. And you can find answers to that question by either learning from someone like Toni or talking to other parents who've been through this. Learn what they have learned and put it in writing. Put it down so that you say, here are the things that we want our children to have. That's it. As parents, as community members, as leaders, as concerned citizens, as teachers. Get teachers on this committee that you're making. And then make your document. Just write it out. What do you want? It's literally, it's your dream. It's your vision for
a school where all students are supported. So number one, decide you're going to do it. Number two, pull together a group of people. Number three, figure out, put in writing what it is that you want to do. And then number four is what Takwa was asking about. Takwa was asking, can we do something with the UN? She asked early on, what do we do to advocate for children with special needs? You have to go to the people who make the decisions.
That's it.
You have to advocate, hold community meetings, invite, like I said, your ministers or your senators or your representatives to come and listen to this issue that matters to you. And this is the only way. This is the only way to make change. You cannot look to governments because we see governments are falling apart. And there's so many problems that this is just one. But this is probably one of the most important ones because it involves the lives of children. There is nothing more important than our children.
Because they are our future.
That's right.
And the more children that are educated, the better off our societies will be because we'll be able to use their minds to do wonderful things like
solve all the problems.
Yes.
Clean the oceans. Come up with alternative energy.
You never know who's going to find these cures. You never know who's going to clean up these oceans. You never know. It could be a child who, struggled in school and they grow up and they go, I have an idea. Let me try this. And they do a science experiment and they remove the, toxins in the ocean.
Yeah.
Wow.
There was a high school student who created a cancer detecting bra for breast cancer. His mom had breast cancer and he decided to make it his high school science project.
Wow.
And it was essentially a heat detecting bra that women would wear. And if there was cancer, there's more heat. It's a fascinating story. So children are driven by causes that they care about.
Yes.
And we just need to enable them to follow that curiosity, which young people have, and just come up with whatever they are envisioning.
Exactly, because it's the children that continue to have their imagination.
Yes.
And so when they take that imagination to the highest order, they can change things. They can change the world. Kids do it all the time.
Yeah.
And they get kudos on the news or whatever, hey, so-and-so did this.
Yeah.
And that's great. But so many other kids have their own imaginations and can do other things. And I just have to say, we have to educate them in order for them to be who they're supposed to be and change the world in which they live.
I love that. That's like the great closing statement. We just have to educate them to be who they're meant to be.
That's it.
In the world. So, Toni, thank you so much. Let me look. We've hit the 2:00 time. So we finished the hour, but if you have anything really quickly you want to just say, or if you want to direct anyone anywhere, I'll let you have the last word here. But let me just say to everyone, thank you all for watching. Again, I'm Amy Carrier. This is Toni Saunders. Toni Saunders is a special education guru. She really is. And she'll give you her contact information and website in just a moment. But thank you to everyone who's here. And I want to remind you to please join Amy Carrier's Classroom. It's a group here on Facebook. You just go to amycarriersclassroom.com. That's the easy way to get to it. I bought the URL. And make sure you join because we're teaching all sorts of things in my virtual classroom on Facebook. Everything from leadership to technology to freelancing to cryptocurrency to there's so many now. I forget leadership and starting new business, entrepreneurship. I have so many experts around the world who have so much knowledge. And by the way, I'm working on bringing her in as one of my expert teachers. And everyone, myself included, we're all just volunteers. We all just come into Amy Carrier's classroom just to teach what we know. Toni has to be paid for her work. I have to be paid for my work. But 1 hour per week, I go live and I share knowledge with you. That is what every other teacher, mentor teacher in my classroom does. They just tell you, hey, this is what I know how to do. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah.
So that's what we're here doing today. And thank you all for watching and for being here. And Toni Saunders is also on Facebook. We will tag her in this video if she's not already. But Toni, why don't you tell them where they can find you?
You can find me all over the web. Just put in Toni Saunders and I come up everywhere.
Toni.
Yes. Saunders. And right now my website is being redesigned. However, you can kind of go in and see some of the things that I do, and it's under my organization. I created a nonprofit organization so that I could work with people who were had less resources than others, and I wanted to keep my charges down so that they would be able to afford to have someone like me come in and tell the team what they're supposed to do.
So what's that web address?
So the web address is Associated Advocacy Center, and what we'll do is we'll put it.
You can actually type it on the screen right now.
Okay.
There.
I will do that.
We're going to put it on screen, everyone.
Ready?
Yep. It's the Associated Advocacy Center.com or .org. .org. In the US, a .org. In a lot of countries, a .org is a
nonprofit organization.
Mm-hmm. So once it's written, hit the button at the end that says show, and then it'll be up on the screen.
Okay.
And then, yeah, not that one.
That one?
Yes.
Okay.
So you can also follow Toni here on Facebook, Toni Saunders. Like I said, she already has followers, and she will go through these comments after our broadcast today and answer any questions that anybody asks, either from today's broadcast, because I know we didn't get to all of the comments, or from those who are watching and rebroadcast.
Right.
Because we do know that this has been shared in many different places, and we're grateful for that. And thank you all for watching. Thank you, Toni.
Thank you
for doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that this was helpful for your journey. And if you do know someone who has special needs and needs, some support for their child, make sure you share this video with them. Right. We talked about just some things, but those were valuable pieces of information, and they'll have access to a lot of what Toni shares.
Right. Because I do a live every Monday through Friday between 9 and 10 o'clock at night.
Excellent.
My time.
Well, everyone, thank you so much. Hey, Tracy. Zafran, hello. Calvin. Yes. What were you going to say?
Nothing.
You sure? Mm-hmm. Okay. So hello, and thank you, everybody, for watching, and we will see you again soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Hit end broadcast.
Oh.